So let's see what's left. Okay, so basically just this top part, and then adding all the bolts around the bottom, and then doing an imperfection pass and making this thing look a little bit more realistic. So remember when I said that we had modeled this piece and that we would reuse it? I think we can do that now because these are so similar. We'll just go ahead and copy this. So it's already ripped off there at the bottom. And then I'll just go ahead and take this part off, duplicate it, and bring it on up. So let's line this piece up. It's going to scale this until we reach the meeting point. There we go, pretty close. Now they're not exactly the same, are they? This is actually a bit thicker than the bottom piece. So let's make that adjustment. Select both of these. Scale this up a little bit. Okay, it's looking pretty good. But I am going to have to go through and add in all those edges. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So let's just do that. Oops. And if you ever cut too far away, you can always just slide it back using the slide edge tool. Okay, I'm not going to do this one because I want that to be round. I'm not being too careful about getting them exactly perfect because these are such minor details. If we were going to have a close-up, then definitely important. But I don't expect we'll ever be that close to see the difference. Alright. Now we can start on this rounded top piece. Let's get a closer look at that. So I expect it'll be pretty similar to the number of these features we have down here. So it's good that we're still using a 16 span cylinder here. It's got 16 edges going around it. I'm just going to go ahead and bring up the top piece to about how high I think it should be, and then extrude it in. And now I'm going to begin sliding this down. Or rather, scaling it. Adding in these loops as we go. I'm going to get into a front view here. Trying to keep these edges as even as I can from top to bottom. and trying to keep that curve as normal looking as I can, for lack of better words. So right now, it doesn't look too normal. It looks kind of flat right here, and there's kind of a corner being turned here. One thing I could do if I want to line this up a little bit better is just go ahead and create a primitive sphere. Bring it in. Give it a whole bunch of spans. Put the middle point, more or less, right here, and then just scale this up until I get a shape that's about what I want. And at this point, I'm essentially using this as a measuring device. So I'm going to grab this sphere, put it on a layer, turn it to a template layer, so I can't select it. And now I can begin scaling these vertices to line up with that sphere. Sometimes things like this end up being way easier than trying to do it by hand. So I'm just trying to keep the distance between these even again. That's pretty close. And by the way, when I'm scaling these, I'm not just scaling them from left to right or on the x-axis. I'm actually scaling in all directions at once. Since it's a flat selection of vertices, it's not going to scale up or down. So it's going to scale from left to right as well as from front to back. And we're looking at it through the front camera, so we won't see any change there. So it looks like it's scaling just left to right. It's actually scaling in all directions. Well, just the two directions that we want. Okay, so let's see what I've done. I'm turning the visibility off. And that looks pretty good. Save my work. Okay, so we do have this feature up here at the top, so I don't need to actually worry about going quite this high. Oop, here's a fun bug in Maya. See how it's moving that other edge as I move this edge? That's totally a bug. See, if you just delete history and then make your selection again, it should go away. Okay, so I'm going to rip off that top, delete it. We'll just bring this in because this is the end of this shape, and we'll have a new shape that takes over up here. So this was looking kind of soft. It's just because we have two edges instead of three. So I'll fix that. And now let's go ahead and cut in these features. I think I will go ahead and do that again, where I preserve a row of faces down here to work with. And let's see, does this go all the way up? It doesn't quite go all the way up. It stops right about there. You can use the paint selection tool for this too. And since this is symmetrical, I could just work on half of this shape and then duplicate it over. But it's not that much more work for me to do it like this. Okay, so I'm going to extrude these faces and push it in a little bit and scale it in a little bit too. Something like that. And just anticipating that we'll need to have an extra edge here. There's an option we can do within the extrude itself. If you move down here in the channel box, change divisions from 1, which is default, to 2. And now it's just going to add that extra line in between. And it's going to update that on the fly too. So it's sort of procedurally based as long as you're inside the tool. Okay, so we'll call that good. And let's see. Yeah, not too bad, especially for the first shot. Usually have to mess around a couple times. It looks fairly accurate too. Maybe a little bit flatter on the bottom is what we need. Maybe not though. I may just revert. Nah, I don't like that so much. So let me attach this now. Now I didn't line that up perfectly, so you can see there's still an opening here. The edge is highlighted, and if you get really close you can sort of see through the gap a little bit right there. So it's not a big deal, I just need to go through and merge these vertices. Now they are shifting a little bit, so there's going to be a very, 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 very slight taper to this fire hydrant, but it's so small that it doesn't even really matter. So, okay, let me add the divisions in here to hold that in. Cool. Okay, so now let's just add that cap to the top, which looks pretty straightforward. So we've got some kind of cylinder. Select the top faces here. Extrude them out. Maybe a little bit too wide. Just want to get that very close. I don't want it to actually crash through, because then it creates that hard edge right there. Rather, we want to have something like this, where there's an implied connection. I'll duplicate this piece and rotate it. In this case, I'm rotating it back to 0, which is where it was originally. And in case you're wondering, the same is also true here. It's just such a small detail, I'm not going to worry about it for right now. But if you really want it to be legit, then you'd also extrude these edges inward and then create the same kind of effect that we have going on right here. It's probably the proper way to do it. But again, I think it's okay for now. Alright, so we're pretty close now. We still have the matter of these bottom pieces to attach and to to add our edges to. So let's see. Reattach that. Reattach this one. Attach that one. Okay, so we're looking pretty good. A couple things before we go any further is that you can see I've overestimated the space between a lot of these different parts. So we'll just have to go back in and do a quick tweak on that. Shouldn't be a big deal. Let me go ahead and just delete history on everything. And what I'm going to do is go into vertice mode. So I'm going to select everything in the scene, and I'm going to go to vertex mode with that button. I've got it on a hotkey, but basically just converting everything to, or converting your selection to vertices only. Hey, that's no good. Okay, so I've still got some transforms on these things. So let me go through and delete not just history, but we're going to modify freeze transformations too. Let's give this a shot now. Okay. Just trying to get it to be similar, more similar to my reference here. That's looking a lot better. Cool. Okay, so what's left? We've got some bolts to attach. Looks like there's probably 8 going around. So I'm going to make a new bolt. I'm not going to use this one again. I'm going to use the typical hexagon type shape. So for that I'm going to need 6. Scale this down. Get rid of these bottom faces. Okay, I'm going to do a quick bevel on this. So again, that's under Edit Mesh, Bevel. I'm going to delete the non-quad faces, which you can easily find by using the anti-triangle tool. So it's going to highlight anything that's not a triangle. Leave the ones on top, but get rid of the ones on bottom. Okay, so now I'm going to delete history on that, freeze transforms on that, and go to the top view. And so I need to duplicate this 7 times. I'm going to put the pivot point on the center of the model, so holding down the D button, and move it right there. And because I'm not known for my math, let's just see what 360, right, 45 makes sense. And let's go ahead and duplicate with special. Reset your settings, edit reset. We're going to want 7 copies. We're going to rotate along the X, Y, 45 degrees. And remember, we're doing 7 because we already have one. There we go. So we have them not just on the top, but on the bottom too. So let's group these. Duplicate the group. And we're going to flip it over 180 in the X. Oops. Actually, oh, I hadn't selected all my bolts there. So we'll make a new group. So you can see I've got a group within a group here. That's not a problem. The pivot point should now be in the center. Just duplicate that. Okay, so one more time. I made a duplicate of these 7. And group all these one more time. Duplicate it. Okay, we're not going crazy. 180 to flip them upside down. There we go. And then we've just got the same thing down here. So let's start by duplicating both of these groups. In fact, I'm just going to group all of these together under one master group. Then duplicate it. Let's bring it down. And in this case, we just need to move these bottom ones up a little bit. And center the pivot. Okay. So the last thing is this little feature right here. Now, if we had to, we could actually, let me just duplicate this and show you. We could actually keep this all as a part of the same mesh. I just have to duplicate this like twice, and then grab these faces here, and do something like this, where we select these, and delete them. Extrude this, bring it down, and clean it up. And then we could actually build that shape right into the mesh. But I don't really want to go that high res with this. I don't necessarily have to res up the entire thing to do this, but where I'm going with this tangent is just that it's going to be a lot of extra work to add that detail into the same mesh. And I think what we can do is something similar to what we've done with these bolt pieces. And that is just keep it as a separate mesh and just intersect it, or have it touching very closely. So let's get an idea of what we're looking at here. Got kind of this squarish shape with a hole in it. So let's start out with a cube. And we'll just model one of these and then duplicate it around. Okay, so the first interesting thing is how do we get a hole inside of a square shape? It all starts out with some extra geometry. Slide this edge back. going to delete these faces. And I'm going to use a new tool now. I think it's a new tool for you, called the Append Polygon tool.